Question for you. Who do you think has the most viewed YouTube TED Talk of all time? Okay, if you've read the title for this video already, you've seen it. But if you haven't seen it yet, take a guess. Who do you think it is? If you go to the TED Talk YouTube channel, you're going to see some big names. You'll see Simon Sinek, Brené Brown, you'll see Bill Gates, but it's none of them. The highest viewed TED Talk, or YouTube TED Talk of all time, is Tim Urban's Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. It's got nearly 42 million views. It's leading the way. And that's the video I'm going to be doing a public speaking reaction video to today, so that we can see what can we learn from the highest viewed YouTube TED Talk of all time. Before we dive into it though, if you are new here, this channel is all about helping to give you the skills to make you a better public speaker, a better communicator, and a better person as well. So if you're into that kind of thing, please do consider subscribing. All right, let's dive right in.
This is how the year would go. So I'd start off light, and I'd bump it up in the middle months. And then at the end, I would kick it up into high gear, just like a little staircase. How hard could it be to just walk up the stairs? No big deal, right? But then, funniest thing happened. Those first few months, they came and went, and I couldn't quite do stuff. So we had an awesome new revised plan. But then those middle months actually went by, and I didn't really write words. And so we were here. And then 2 months turned into 1 month, which turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, still not having written a word. And so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, pulling not one but 2 all-nighters. Humans are not supposed to pull 2 all-nighters. Sprinted across campus, dove in slow motion, and got it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. It's the school. And they say, "Is this Tim Urban?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "We need to talk about your thesis." And I say, "Okay." And they say, "It's the best one we've ever seen." That did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis.
What an intro. He's got the whole room hooked at this point. Let's talk about 3 of the biggest strengths that he's used in that couple-minute introduction. The first is relatability. Tim picked a topic that every single person can relate to. All of the 42 million people who've watched this TED Talk can relate to procrastination. We've all experienced procrastination in one way or another. We're all on the scale at some point, some of us more than others, but we're all there. The thing is, if people can't relate to your topic, you're going to isolate parts of the audience. And on the flip side, if you pick something that people actually resonate with deep down, they're going to be way more engaged from the get-go. The second strength that he's used to make that intro so good is the use of humor. He is really funny. I would almost say that that first 3 minutes probably had more laughs than a lot of stand-up comedians would get. And at that point, the audience is flooded with endorphins, which is going to make them less critical, and it's going to make them more likely to buy into what he's saying. And there's 2 main ways he got people laughing in that introduction. The first is with misdirection. He'd get us to expect him to go in a certain way, and then at the last minute, he'd flip and do the opposite. He creates so much anticipation when he hands in the paper, and the school calls, and they want to talk to him. And we're kind of expecting the worst here. And then he completely surprises us by saying, "It was one of the best we've ever seen." So you have misdirection there. Then there's a long pause, and we're wondering, how did he do it? He only spent 3 days on this thesis. How could it possibly be one of the best? Again, he adds suspense. And then he flips it again by saying, "No, that did not happen." I mean, that part was hilarious. And the second way that he used humor is actually the third strength of the introduction that I was going to talk about. And it's the use of visuals. The slides he uses are genius. The timing of them is perfect, and it's almost like he uses them for the punchline of a joke. The other thing that was so great about them though was they had so much clarity. The second each one of those slides popped up on the screen, we knew exactly what he was talking about. There was no doubt at all. If we say to ourselves, well, how did he make it so clear? He kept it simple. There was nothing on those slides that didn't have to be there. And because of that, there was no confusion to the point. Often when we're doing presentations, maybe we want to put in some kind of complex graph, or we squeeze too much information into just one slide. And it means that people might lose the real key point, the real purpose of that slide. But what Tim does, he has no noise besides the main point. And it made everything incredibly clear. The other way he used humor with the slides was by creating anticipation with a sequence of events. At one point he says, this is what was supposed to happen, but it didn't. Then this is what was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen either. And then this is what actually happened. And each time we saw one of those slides pop up, the images pop up, we kind of had an expectation of where that trend was going. But I still laughed every single time, and so did the audience. There was something incredibly effective about it.
A couple of years ago, I decided to write about procrastination. My behavior has always perplexed the non-procrastinators around me, and I wanted to explain to the non-procrastinators of the world what goes on in the heads of procrastinators and why we are the way we are. Now, I had a hypothesis that the brains of procrastinators were actually different than the brains of other people. And to test this, I found an MRI lab that actually let me scan both my brain and the brain of a proven non-procrastinator, so I could compare them, and I actually brought them here to show you today, and I want you to take a look carefully to see if you can notice a difference. And I know that if you're not a trained brain expert, it's not that obvious, but just take a look, okay? So here's the brain of a non-procrastinator. Now, here's my brain.
Tim is also a master at using analogies. When he talks about the instant gratification monkey, the dark playground, the panic monster, I mean, it brings those parts of us alive. Analogies in general are very visual, but then by stacking that visual aspect of them with the actual images of them, it just made it crystal clear. And you can see how much better it is to use an analogy that's fun and creative and interesting than if he had just said, these are the traits of a procrastinator. It wouldn't have had nearly as much effect.
How does the procrastinator ever get himself over here to this blue zone? A less pleasant place, but where really important things happen. Well, turns out that the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always looking down on him and watching over him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence. And importantly, he's the only thing that the monkey is terrified of.
There's also something just hilarious about calling a character the panic monster and then having a picture that looks like it was drawn by a 6-year-old. And Tim's always juxtaposing ideas like this. It works really well. The analogies were also a really strong way of giving advice without getting people defensive. If he'd just said, if you're a procrastinator, you need to do this, and you need to stop doing this, some people would have been like, hey, all right, who are you to tell me what to do? But by telling us what the instant gratification monkey shouldn't do and what the rational decision maker should do, he's in effect giving us the advice, but in a really gentle, indirect way. So in that case, it's going to be more likely to land for a lot of people.
Now, what does this mean for the procrastinator? Well, it means everything's fine until this happens. So the rational decision maker will make the rational decision to do something productive, but the monkey doesn't like that plan. So he actually takes the wheel and he says, actually, let's read the entire Wikipedia page of the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding scandal because I just remembered that happened.
If you've got characters in a story, you have to give them dialogue because that is what helps create emotions in the audience. It's what helps bring the story to life. So you can see why it's so important to have the dialogue between the instant gratification monkey and the rational decision maker, because it shows us that conflict between the two. And any good story needs conflict. It needs a clash. It needs something at stake to really draw the audience in.
But in the middle of all this excitement, the rational decision maker seemed to have something else in his mind. He was saying, are we clear on what we just accepted? Do we get what's going to be now happening one day in the future? We need to sit down and work on this right now. And the monkey said, totally agree, but also let's just open Google Earth and let's zoom into the bottom of India, like 200 feet above the ground, and we're going to scroll up for 2.5 hours till we get to the top of the country so we can get a better feel for India.
As he's talking here, listen to the pitch. How he starts off high at times, then he goes neutral, and then he goes low, and then back to high, and over and over. He uses the full range of his pitch, and he does it naturally. It doesn't really jump out at us. We wouldn't really notice it if we weren't looking out for it. His voice is a big strength of his. He also says, "Are we clear?" in this playful, high-pitched voice.
But in the middle of all this excitement, the rational decision maker seemed to have something else in his mind. He was saying, "Are we clear?"
He does that quite a few times. It makes what he's saying more interesting. So what are my main takeaways from this TED Talk? I'd say 3 main things. The first is the importance of how you package your content. The idea of procrastination and instant gratification, it's nothing new. We've heard that stuff before. But Tim was able to come up with this completely creative and original way of packaging the information for us so that it felt new, it felt fresh. The second takeaway I have is the importance of knowing your content at a deep level. If you searched how to stop procrastinating on Google, you're going to get thousands of results, loads of blogs, but none of them have 42 million views. And for a lot of the content, nobody cares. So why do we care so much about this one? Before Tim gave us the advice, he connected with us. He made us invested in the content. And then when he did give the advice, we were ready to actually receive it. And we were in a state of mind where we might actually take action on it. And how did he do that? Well, he did it by understanding his content at such a deep level. It was almost like he understood our issues with procrastination better than we do ourselves. It's like he was inside our mind, able to just hone in and articulate those exact ideas better than we ever could. Watching that TED Talk, I could almost feel like I could see the audience saying, nodding along with him as he spoke, being like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I know what you mean. Yes. That sort of connection between the content and the audience is just incredibly powerful. And the third takeaway I have is the importance of having a multi-purpose speech. Most talks have one purpose, maybe 1.5. A comedian is there to entertain. A salesperson is there to persuade. A teacher is there to inform. But this TED Talk had so many different purposes. Informed us, he educated us because he taught us about the brain. It was entertaining, it was funny, it was motivational because we were actually motivated to act on his advice regarding procrastination. And to have multiple purposes in one talk like this is incredibly hard to do, but you can see how powerful it is, how effective it is. This was an amazing TED Talk. 42 million views, well deserved. I have 2 questions for you guys. The first is, do you think that this TED Talk deserved to be the highest viewed on YouTube? Let me know in the comments below. And the second question is there anyone you would like to see me do a public speaking reaction video to next? If so, let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to read them all. If you're wondering what to watch next, definitely check out this public speaking reaction video I did to the amazing Trevor Noah. It'll pop up on the right-hand side here. Make sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you next one.